This is Progress Culture. Progress Culture is a weekly happening where master drummer Paul F. Murphy and I share live improvised music and impromptu conversations with people from various fields and expertises about community, value, art, science, freedom, and progress for all. We are excited to share it all with you, so have a listen and see what's going on this week on Progress Culture. Now, let's get into the show. But first, let's hear some music. Everyone, Dominic Fragman here with Paul Murphy from the Spirit of Innovation and Freedom here for this week's episode of Progress Culture. And we're going to do something that I really enjoy doing. We get the chance to I get to talk to Paul. And although I get to talk to Paul all the time, it's always a lot of fun. So I have been sort of itching and thinking about, you have a lot of stories about touring the world and doing some pretty interesting things that I think would surprise a lot of people. And but one of those stories, I don't know if it would surprise anybody or not. There's a story that you have told me when you were playing at the BIM House in Paris. And the reaction of the crowd.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah. That was with Jimmy Lyons and Karen Borka and Jay Oliver on bass.
What year?
Myself. uh, late 70s, I believe. Somewhere in there. Anyway, we're playing at, it was actually a 24-hour concert, and there were 24 different bands that were playing at the BIM House. And there was all types of music from the avant-garde to bop.
Mm.
And I got to, enjoy and see a whole lot of very, very famous people play. And when I was talking to Jimmy, right before we were going up on stage, Jimmy said, man, he said, what do you think? I said, oh, man, you kidding me? Listen to all these cats. And Jimmy said, yeah. He said, when we get up there, he said, I don't want any reference to bebop. You understand me? I said, yeah, I do understand you.
So don't reference anything like what's been going on here.
That's right. I don't want to hear any of that. I want to hear us. I said, okay. So we went up there and kicked off the set. We were the featured band out of the whole 24 hours.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Part.
So we kicked off the set, and it was just extremely intense, the music. And it was so intense that actually I saw myself playing from about 6 feet above where I was sitting and playing. And I mean, it was like a very, very, no other way to describe it than spiritual or muse showing me that.
Right.
And, that lasted for, a little while, probably 30 seconds. And then, I was back in the hit of it, and we played and we played, and we played for about, I guess, maybe an hour and 20 minutes and ended the set. And when the set ended, the BIM House, which was completely packed with people, was totally dead silent. I mean silent. No glasses clicking, no table forks or spoons moving. Silent. And it stayed that way long enough that Jimmy actually put the cap on the horn and started to turn. That meant we were going off stage. And then as that happened, there was just this tremendous amount of noise. And I had no idea what was happening because, there were so many people in there. It was people, but this was not the noise that you usually hear from people. And as it continued and got louder and louder and louder, you could see as you stood on the stage that, number one, the audience of people just started screaming and applauding, but the noise that was happening were like 20 people in the back of the BIM House where the bar is, like in front of the band, but all the way back, and the BIM House isn't small, all the way back, they were literally breaking chairs against the wall inside the club. And everybody just went insane. And that was quite a gig and quite an ovation, I guess.
That's wild, man. They just
and the music was definitely nowhere related to anything like bebop or anything else. It was Jimmy at the max, and that's very, very strong playing.
I find it interesting because, just in the world of across disciplines of dealing with people or meeting people or speaking with people, whatever. I don't mean dealing with them, but encountering their ideas and the way that they think of things. And there's those people who are doing something that might be a little outside, and those people that are doing always inside stuff. But the idea being like, hey, all these people are here mainly for something that what you did wasn't.
Exactly.
And you were instructed to go out there and do the thing that supposedly wasn't necessarily the reason why. Well, maybe not necessarily the reason why everybody was there, but the popular thing that they were seeing.
Right.
And totally blew their mind.
Yeah, it totally blew their minds. It also blew mine. I mean, you know, I had never witnessed anything like that before.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
And, I mean, you know, it was pretty... That was not only the wildest part of that night. Right after we played, a big band came on and played, and there was going to be partying for the next 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
It was after 24 hours, right? So on the way back to the hotel, Jimmy said to me, he said, I got to go back to the hotel. I got to go back to the BIM house. I said, what for? He says, I just got to go back. I said, I'll go with you. He said, no. I said, what you got to go back for, man? And he said, you know, man, he said, we got paid in cash. I said, yeah. And he goes, I left the cash on the bar.
Man.
On the bar, all right? And there's a lot of people in this place. You know, a couple hundred people. So I walked back to the club with him, and the owner of the club, of course, he was right there at the bar. And Jimmy walked over to the seat where he had been talking with the owner before we left. And the money was sitting right there, untouched. Amazing. I mean, it sounds like something you'd make up, but I didn't make it up. It's not a lie. It's the truth. And it was really intense. An intense moment. Yeah.
I've got nothing to. I've never had any experiences like that. I think one of the craziest things that ever happened to me on stage, really, where the audience reaction, and well, not to say that, you know, of course you have probably a slew of other stories where the reactions are high level or whatever, but there's some that stick out, and that one has always stuck out to me as like a pretty amazing reaction. There was one time I was playing in Baltimore at a club called the Wind Up Space, and I was playing. I can't remember who I was playing with, but you know, I started doing this solo trio thing. And the solo trio is where I play guitar and drums and sing at the same time. And usually there will be things that happen to people. Like most of the time, people would freak out and screaming and doing all this stuff. And this one time it was kind of similar. Like I played all this stuff, and it was like featured, and the place was packed, packed place. And I did whatever I did where I was playing, swinging my hair around, and I just did some freak out stuff, and kind of, you know, sometimes you kind of black out when you're playing, right? So like I'm in this mode, and I kind of finish and get myself together, and then like the crowd is not very responsive, and a lot of times people just stand there and look at you doing this thing. We're like, what in the world is going on? And then all of a sudden, the whole club started cheering and chanting, holy shit, holy shit, holy, for like 5 minutes. And I was like, whoa, what do you do with that?
Yeah, man.
But nothing, that's nothing like, I still feel like nothing like what you're talking about, where you can hit people with, you know, I'm hitting them with something they haven't seen before, but maybe not so much necessarily something that they haven't heard before, which is can be a big difference. You know, the way that makes you feel just from the vibrations itself of what you're sending out. We did an interview for it was 10 years ago or something like that for All About Jazz, and I asked you about something, and you said something about music being one of the most, I can't remember what your words were, but it was like one of the most powerful forms of art in the way that it can affect people when you can project ideas and thoughts from what you're playing, from the vibrations and what they're hearing. And you said something like it's almost like meditation, but it can be felt by other people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it can definitely be felt by other people. And, I mean, when you think about it, the music, I mean, once it's played, it's in the air and it's gone. It's nothing that you touched.
Right.
It's nothing that you smelled. Nothing that you tasted. You did hear it, and or your body felt it, and the people react to whatever it is that they have felt. But that being said, that is almost like spiritual as well, because like I said in the beginning, as Miles said a long time before me, once it's in the air, it's gone.
Right.
But the people who are listening to it or who are present, they definitely feel one way or the other, or many ways or the other about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they have different thoughts about it, different feelings about it. And it's completely different than listening to, say, a record, a recording. Because recordings, as great as they may be engineered these days, are nowhere near the projection of thought and musical ability that's actually happening in that space. It's nowhere near it.
Right.
And I mean, that can be said by, like, you can take a John Coltrane, you can take a Miles Davis, you can listen to their records as much as you want to listen to them, and you can go to school and you can talk about them as much as you want to talk about them. But if you never really heard them play, that's a very, very, very big difference in your understanding of what they were actually doing.
Several times I have this, I feel I'm not very fond of recorded music for a lot of reasons. I mean, I like to have access to things and learn, But as far as the representation that recorded music offers of the actual phenomenon, it does nowhere near anywhere. It doesn't. There's nowhere near. Doesn't represent it sonically. It doesn't represent it spiritually. It doesn't represent it emotionally. I don't feel those things the same way I do when I'm playing it. Or when I'm feeling it live. There's certain things that the recordings just don't capture about the balance of sound and all those things that you would be lost if you hadn't, like you said, experienced it in person. And one of the things that I feel very grateful for, and I put a lot of value in, is I grew up in my house. My dad played drums and guitar and sang.
Right.
And then me, my brothers, and my sister played too, but me and my brothers and my dad would play together all the time. And I grew up playing with people, interacting with people, and not necessarily have a static recording that I'm trying to match something to.
Right.
And I think there's a different result that has come from that, a positive result that I'm.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And in the same way, the things that I've been able to hear and perceive from listening to you, but also playing with you. I mean, we talked about this recently where it's like, I've been listening to you play for 13 years. But in the last year or so, with all the playing we've been doing, it's like I hear it completely different, even still.
Yeah, that's, the understanding of and the comprehension of basically just music itself.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been studying a long, long time and playing and putting a lot of time into the drums, a lot of time into the guitar. And I mean, I'll just say this. I think we played PAX in January. Well, whatever happened to PAX in January is nothing near or close compositionally to what is happening right now.
Sure.
And that also goes to say that what's happening compositionally right now is going to grow within the next time we play.
Right.
Whether it's a day from now, a week from now, and it's just going to keep growing and forming. And you on the guitar, you're bringing out a side of you and your understanding of music. You're bringing out your sense of composition, and the both of us are able to interact with it, as well as I've had the great opportunity of being able to interact with Jerry, my wife, a poet, who you also interact with, and Larry Willis, pianist, whom you also interacted with. And going back a little farther than Larry, you interacted with a very, very dear friend of mine, Cecil Taylor. So there's not any real reason why your knowledge and thoughts of composition, and forget the word composition, just use music, are just continuing to expand and grow and grow. And that's what it does. I mean, I'm going on 72, and I may be slowing down and not quite as strong, but I'm still learning as I go. And that's music.
Yeah, I get excited about it.
Yeah.
All the things that I get so frustrated about, all these things where I had to come to this realization where we kind of talked about this, I don't know, within a recent episode where I was like, I've erased my whiteboard 3 times because all the things that I put on it are just like these things that I'm hoping will result from my ability to play music. Or, like you put in this time and you practice and you try to develop these things. And when I put those things on my whiteboard, Kennedy Center, the Philharmonie, touring wherever in the world, those things, or record contract, or just anything, those things are all external to music. The only expectation I can have of giving my life to music is that I will progress at music. And that is happening. And it's like the whiteboard means nothing after that. I guess I could just write up there like, I don't even know what I would write. Because at this point, when I think about improving at music, I don't think about improving my digits or my appendages. I think about how can I better project, like what you were talking about, my spirit and my thoughts into this so that somebody can hear it, feel it, and know what to do after that, or whatever.
And recognize the concept.
Right.
Right. Because conception is a great part of people being able to understand it.
How would you explain concept in this way?
The only way I know to explain concept in this way is innovation. In other words, there's a lot of concepts out there already, and you can just go on a computer or what have you, a TV or radio, and listen to a whole lot of different concepts of music. You can listen to rock and roll, you can listen to blues, you can listen to this type of jazz, that type of jazz, rock, classical. You can listen to all of it. Mm-hmm. But for you to bring something that's conceptually new forward, that is actual true innovation. And the innovations happen in music, they usually happen in concept or in style. Like the leaders either broke in style or they broke in concept.
How would you explain that difference?
Well, style would be, say, going from swing to bop.
Right.
Those gentlemen broke that style. Concept would be going from bop to total improvisation.
With this metaphor or this comparison, does it work? And this is something I've been thinking about in my head, where how do you explain this to people? Because you've been talking to me about this since the beginning. Like, you can innovate in 2 ways: style or concept, or then both, I guess, if
right.
Concept breaks is inclusive of that, perhaps. But so then there was a guy named, I'm going to mess his name up, but I think it was Clayton Cameron, or Christian Cameron, or he was I think he's passed, but he was in the business school at Harvard, and he would talk about innovation as in sustaining innovation and disruptive innovation. So I would think of sustaining innovation as like making a cell phone. That there was already a phone that did that, but now here you've got a different version of it that's evolved, and that's like style
that you can walk around with.
Yeah, a disruptive innovation would be a holographic communication device, right? Like where there's nothing else like it yet, and it totally would displace Like if we all had holographic things and that's what we like to use, it would replace the cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different thing. But I think when I think of it, I think of it more like languages. So a stylistic or a sustaining innovation would be like a dialect.
Would be like the cell phone.
Right. And then a conceptual disruptive thing would be a totally different language.
Right.
So you have your concept, which is the foundation as a language, and then a dialect of that would be a stylistic thing.
Yeah.
So, and to just take it a little bit further, when you have that conceptual new language, when you hear somebody speak a language that you have not heard before, it doesn't mean that they're speaking gibberish and they're not saying anything.
No.
It often requires some familiarity, some time to listen in, tune in, and not write it off right away as nonsense.
Right.
Because it's unfamiliar or whatever. If I'm going to, we have to immerse ourselves. If we're going to learn a language, they say the most effective way is full immersion.
Right.
Now, I mean, sure, I would suggest that you fully immerse yourself in our music every day. But let's be realistic. Just it takes a little bit of time sometimes for those of us who aren't familiar. So
definitely.
But to sort of also then circle back to something we were touching on earlier about the effects of the music on people in person, not in a recording necessarily. Are you familiar with the the effects of emotion on snowflakes and water molecules and stuff like that?
I mean, I've heard about it and I've thought about it.
They say, they say that if you expose a molecule of water or a snowflake or something like that to, like if you speak at it angrily, it changes shape.
Oh, yeah.
If you speak at it with love, it has another shape. And just the fact that and that's somatics, right? That's all. Well, it's partly somatics because somatics is more of the frequency that changes the shape that a bunch of sand will form into, or water, or something. But I have to think that as a human being made most 70% or so of water, that's got to have, if into my music, what I put into it is going to affect somehow the shapes of the molecules in your body. To represent or respond to negativity or positivity or whatever else,
somewhere
right?
in between.
Some spiritual thing. Like if I'm putting that into what I'm doing, and have the success of actually communicating it. That's what I mean when I say the digits. Yeah, of course I got to work on my digits and get them to be more aligned with, match more of this. But how do I sometimes I feel like I wish I could do something very proactive about making sure that the spirit that I want in the music is in it, and it also has an impact on somebody. And I don't know if you can. I mean, like when you think about those people that were smashing those chairs.
I think that you see the spirit, and what I mean by see it, I mean in your mind you're seeing it, is best served is when you're playing. When you're playing and you're interacting, the more concentration you have on the interacting, the closer you are to that spiritual interaction. And the more focused your mind is there than on, do people like this, or is this okay, or does this sound good, or is that? That's not all going through your mind when you're fully concentrating and interacting.
Yeah,
musically.
When that stuff's in my mind, the music's not usually strong.
Right. Yeah.
Because
exactly.
You're like, well, if I play it like this.
And that's why when we play, it's best not to have any of that in your mind.
Right. You try to put. I think I'm getting better at putting it out of my mind. It's not always been,
Right.
you know, like you think about that. I think about it because it's partly, you know, embedded in it and embedded in the history, the primal history of music and drumming is communication.
Yeah.
I beat this drum, and when I beat this drum, you light your thing over there.
Right.
Or I'm going to beat this drum, and when I beat this drum, that means there's danger coming, or it's time to raise the crops, or whatever, you know. And those things, that communication was in there. So I'm always conscious of that. And there are times I think where I have been more concerned about whether or not somebody would perceive it and receive it.
Right.
Whereas, like, I think to get to the level of something where you affect people so greatly that they don't know what to do, and then they start smashing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
that's got to be that has to be in there. That intention, I think, that ability to do that.
Right.
I actually had somebody recently sort of criticize me for keeping my eyes closed when I'm playing. They're like, you're not playing music for anybody other than you. Like, you don't even care. And it's true and it's not true. I don't need to tell you that, but it's funny how people would perceive that, because, and in that state, really what I'm going for is to give the best result to the listener.
To the people, right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. And that's what
Amen.
will hope to continue to do. And I always say that I'm grateful, but I am grateful for the opportunity to do it here in front of people that seem to be perceiving and receiving it.
Yep.
And it's awesome.
Thank you, Tommy Luganville and TechPort and everyone else.
Yeah. And just, yeah.
Matt.
Everybody is supportive, and I think we try to give that support back too, and that's all
definitely
necessary, just as it is in our interactions together when we're making music.
Man, those were great sandwiches that Barbara about to
I'm about to go.
I needed one.
I am about to go eat my sandwich now that Barbara brought in. So, cool. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to getting to have the Fireside music chats with the master drummer Paul F. Murphy here. So
cool. Well, thank you, Dominic.
It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to playing some music real soon.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Thank you guys for being here. We do this every week. Lots of videos on my YouTube channel and Facebook page. So check it out. We're posting stuff every day, and we hope you will come back again. Thanks. See you next time. Thank you all so much for being with us. We are grateful that you give us your consideration and attention. Please follow and reach out to the Spirit of Innovation and Freedom and TechPort on Facebook and YouTube, or at spiritinnovationfreedom.com and techportsomd.org, and also www.progressculture.org. Let us know what you're thinking and what you want to hear about and how you're feeling. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to see you again next week on Progress Culture. Thank you, much love, and see you soon.